And here you have our finished product. The first thing you're going to do to make this doll is go to CouturierMommy.com and you're going to get the free, yes I said free pattern that we have posted on there, or that I have posted on there. And you're going to cut out the pieces. We've got the head, the body, 2 pieces of hair for the top and the bottom. This is the braid. And I'm going to show you how I would cut out the skirt and the arms. Now this is the arm and leg pattern piece. I need 4 of those, but instead of cutting them individually, we're going to sew them all at one time. So the first thing I'm going to do is rip my fabric. You've seen this in my videos on preparing your fabric. You're going to take a little snip, about 1/2 inch in, and you're going to rip. See how that ripped off? I'm going to do it again because I want one nice rip all the way across. That's going to let me know that my fabric is nice and even. And if it keeps doing it, then you keep doing it. Maybe take a little bigger cut this time until you can rip all the way across. That was a successful rip. Now I know it's successful because I can pull one string all the way back to the beginning. Now I'm going to take my pattern piece for the arms and legs, right here. I'm going to lay it down on my fabric and I'm going to see how wide it is, and then I'm going to make a little cut. And I am going to rip again. Okay, now what I can do is sew this all the way across at one time and then cut it into sections and just sew the little sections up. And it just takes one step and makes it a little faster when making this doll. So now let's go ahead and get started with the skirt. Now let's get started with the skirt because we're going to do it the same way using the pattern piece. For the skirt, I'm going to take whatever fabric I'm using. I am going to rip it like I did to make it even, and then I am going to measure down 7 inches. And I'm using my board that I have. You can definitely use a ruler. I'm going to make a little slit, as you can see right there, and I'm going to rip it. And then that's going to be my skirt, the length of the fabric for this one. And how I came to that is anytime you are doing a ruffle, 3 times is a great rule. Okay, so that's what I've done. This body is that's one body right there. So if you keep rolling it, it's almost the length of this piece of fabric. So that's what we're going to use for our ruffled skirt. So we're getting started with her limbs, her arms and her legs. And the first thing I'm going to do is take my piece of fabric, as you can see, and fold it in half. I'm not going to iron it, but I am going to pin it so it stays closed. And I'm going to pin it every 2 inches like I've done throughout anything I'm sewing. And I'm going to go across here all the way down to the other side and across the bottom down there as well. Okay, hopefully you can see that I did it in a darker thread, that we went straight across and down all the way, and you can see I did both ends. And you're probably going, Eva, wait a minute, why did you do both ends? Because now we can't get into it. Well, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to use this measurement guide that we have for the arms and legs. And I'm going to do 1, and I'm going to cut it. 1 arm. 2 arms. I'm going to flip over here and do 1. And 2. Now, yes, I do have a leftover limb, which is totally fine. You're welcome to use it to make several more dolls, which is what I hope you will want to do and ship them to India with us. Or you can just throw that away and you have all your limbs. Now, the 2 that don't have ends on them, these 2 versus these 2, I'm just going to stitch across right there, and then we're going to stuff them. Alright, now that those are sewn right across, all 4 of them are done, we're going to use my handy dandy stuffing tool. This is a rod, or a dowel rod that you can buy from Michael's or anywhere else. And I use this to turn, but I'm also going to use this to stuff. So to turn, all I'm going to do is take it, I'm going to start the end by sticking my fingers in there. Then I can stick my stick in, stick it right through, and voila, you have turned your leg. Now, I'm going to do that to all 4 pieces. But to stuff, I'm going to use the opposite end of my stick. This was the dowel that I broke in half just over my knee. And then I took a hammer and I hammered the top of it flat, just like this. I put it on the floor so it'd be a little sturdier. And I sprawled out the top, and you can see that really close right there. And what that's going to do is grab my stuffing and pull it through. The more spread out, the better. I looked online and people suggested paintbrushes and things like that. I didn't have any good luck with those, but this seems to work really well for stuffing. So then you're just going to grab a handful of stuffing out of your box or out of your bag that you just bought at Michael's or Joann's. Wrap my tip, and I'm just going to start sticking it in there. And this takes a little while to get the hang of, but you'll see it all starts going in there, and we're going to stuff all 4 of them that way. And I want to stuff them pretty tight, so it takes more stuffing than you can imagine. Samantha, who writes the devotionals, and I sat down one night and made a bunch of dolls and practiced, and we decided it takes about 3 ounces of stuffing per doll to get the doll stuffed adequately. So see, you can just stick it right in there, and it goes right in. It even doesn't want to come out, so that's how good it's being stuffed. And you can see I'm doing it pretty tight, leaving that body open. I'm going to do that to all 4 limbs. Okay, now you can see I've got all my legs stuffed and ready to go. I'm going to do the body. So what I've got here is my body piece in the green. And I'm going to lay it down. Here's my neckline, and I'm going to put my neck of my head right there, and I'm going to pin. And I'm going to sew that right across. And I'm going to do that for both the front and the back. Okay, there we go. Both pieces done. And if you open it up, you can see her little body, which is exactly what we're going to do. And now I'm going to put her hair on. And her hair is really fun. I'm just going to lay it right there. I'm going to pin it in place, matching the top of her head. And then I'm going to do the same thing for this. And then what I'm going to do is sew a top stitch line. I'm not even going to switch threads. I'm not going to do anything. Straight across there, straight across here. And that's going to hold the hair in place. Okay, you can see that I have pinned her hair in place. I'm just going to lay it down right here with my foot matching the side of my foot, matching her hairline. And I'm just going to sew straight across. When I get to the point, I'm going to roll my needle down, move it over, and there we have our hair. Now for the braid, I'm going to take that piece of fabric, which measures about, I don't know, 3 inches by 11 inches, and all I'm going to do is cut on the dotted lines 3 sections, and I'm going to leave about 1/2 inch at the top. Okay? Just like that. So now that I have it all laid out like this, I'm going to take it and I'm going to roll it with my fingers, and I'm trying to do this so you can see well. Just roll it up. Like that. And that's going to be her hair. And I'm going to pin it in place on her head right here. And what we want is it to lay like that down the side of her head. So we want to stick it out like that. And when I sew this doll together, her head will just be sticking out right there. Now, I'm going to lay her down, and we're going to put her together. We're going to take her arms, and I'm going to pin those on. You might want to pin each side of her arm. Make it a little sturdier, a little easier. Don't worry about the strings and all that kind of stuff, because that's all going to get caught in the inside. You can see the stuffing sticking out a little bit. These dolls are for fun, and we want to make nice dolls for the little girls in India, but they are an easy kind of throw together thing. That's why we chose them. Now for the legs, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to pin the legs on. And you can put the seams anywhere, inside, outside, whatever you want. It's not going to affect the doll in any way, shape, or form. And as you can see, I'm just making it kind of even on either side. now that I have her hair pinned on, her arms and legs pinned on, I'm going to take my other piece and lay it right on top, and I'm going to check my neck seam, and that's where I'm going to start with the pins. And I'm going to pin all the way around, tucking all that stuff inside. So you can see her hair's inside. This is going to take a while to pin around it, but that's okay. Her hair's inside. I'm going to tuck the arms in, and the legs will just be hanging out the bottom. Okay? Now that I have her arms and legs and all that kind of stuff pinned on, even her hair, first thing, I'm just going to sew those legs in place so they don't move around. Okay, as you can see, I went ahead and did her legs across the bottom, and I did her arms because, as all mothers know, the first thing to go in a doll is those arms and legs. They fall off and you have to reattach them. So that just gives a little extra security. It will actually be sewn twice because now that we have that on, we're going to let the legs hang out the bottom. As we put this on, we are going to pin all the way around, tucking her hair inside. We're going to pin all the way around that, let her arms hang out the bottom as well, and we're going to sew that up, and then we can stuff the doll from the bottom part. Okay, here you can see my pinning job. All the way around here, all the way around here, and all I'm going to do is take that stitch and my 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around. Now you can see she's all sewn up, and this is her little pigtail or ponytail hanging out the top. And here's her arms and legs. We're just going to stick our hand in there and flip her out. Push your head out, push everything out, and you can see we have our little doll. At this point, I like to go ahead and braid her hair, but you can do it later on. It doesn't really matter. You can just pin her head straight down to the board and do that. And I like to do a little stitch right here to secure that braid so it's not going anywhere. Okay, now we're just going to stuff her body now that it's all in there, and I'm just going to take it and stick as much as I can up into that head. Just going to keep grabbing handfuls until her body is pretty full, and but I don't want it so tight that I can't close this the 1/2 inch at the bottom. I'm just going to sticking it up in there, and see how her face is popping out. Just keep going. Okay, as you can see, I've got her pretty full, and I've got about 1 inch down here at the bottom that isn't stuffed, but this is pretty firm. And that's exactly what I want, because I need to sew across here, and if I get too much, it's going to be really hard to sew. So you can see 1.5 inches, 1.25 inches maybe, is what I've got. So now, what I'm going to do is take this, and I'm going to roll it up the 1/2 inch seam allowance, and I'm just going to tuck her legs and everything in there, and I'm going to pin it in place. Okay, as you can see, I have pinned all the way across. Now I'm just going to sew all the way across. And it does take a little manipulation to get those legs in there and get it laying just flat. But if you sew it across, you'll have her entire body done, and it'll be time to make her skirt. And there we have it. There's our seam, and there's our doll. She has some little strings hanging out that I'm just going to cut right off. And I'm going to use a lint brush on her and de-lint her a little bit to get that fuzz off. And now it's time to make her skirt. Okay, for her skirt, the first thing I'm going to do is take my 2 ends of my fabric, and I'm just going to sew it up at 1/2 inch. It's already finished, so I don't have to worry about that at all. It'll all be clean. Okay, a little note that I've not mentioned in this, but would like to remind people, is I always backstitch. Every time I stitch, it doesn't matter what I'm doing, there is a backstitch involved. So that kind of should go without saying for me. Now what I'm going to do is open this up. I'm going to iron this up, the bottom up, about 1/4 inch for my hem, and this one's going to go down 1 inch because this is going to be my waistband, and what we want to be able to do is run a piece of elastic or a piece of string through here for her belly. So the first thing I'm going to do is say, okay, I can fold it, I can eyeball it, but if you can't eyeball it, a great tip is to go ahead and sew a basting stitch where you need it, at the 1/2 inch mark, at the inch mark on your sewing machine, and that way you'll know exactly where you need to fold and iron, and you can take it out. Okay, as you can see, I put that basting stitch in at the top and the bottom. That makes it a little easier if you're scared of folding. Now I'm just going to take my iron and fold that all down. For the waist, I'm not going to flip it again. I'm just going to do it one time and sew it up. For the hem, I'm going to flip it and flip it again so it's a pretty hem on the bottom of her skirt. Now you can see I've ironed that all down, and all I'm going to do is take a straight stitch, and here I'm going to take it right through the center of the hem, and here I'm going to take it right here 1/4 of an inch away from that fold, because again that's where my string is going to be, and I'm going to leave a little opening on the hem, so I'm going to leave about 1/2 inch so I can get a string through there to gather this together. Now if you had done your hem like I suggested with the string, at this point is a great time to take it out because you don't need it anymore. It was just there to show you where to fold. So a little pop and pull, and it should be taken care of. See, I can flip it in here. What I would probably do is do it in the same color, and then you don't even have to worry about taking it out if I had done this in a blue, but I wanted to make sure you could see it. So here's my little skirt that I have made. You can see again, like I said, I didn't finish the edge in here because it's going to be up next to the waist, but I did finish the hem. So that shouldn't fall apart at all. And now I'm going to take a safety pin and run a string through this. You could use elastic, which is what I did on the first doll, but since we need to make 120, it's a little more economical to use a thread. So all I'm going to use for that string is thread. This is my thread container. Your ball of thread. This is a Similac baby formula can. Poked a hole in the top, and now my thread's not going to unravel. It's not going to go anywhere. So what I do is I need a piece big enough for the doll's waist, which isn't very much. I'm going to make a knot in the back of that string, and I'm going to do it a couple times because I want it to be really sturdy. Then I'm going to take my safety pin and I'm going to run it through just like that and close it. Now I'm going to grab my skirt, and you can see that 1/2 inch opening that I left that I can stick my finger in, and I'm going to stick that safety pin through, gather, 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 grab, gather, 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 grab, and I'm going to do that all the way around until it comes out the other end. Okay, now that I've gathered it all the way through, it took me about a minute, no big deal at all. I'm going to take that safety pin and just run it out that hole again. See it right there? And I'm going to pull it, and then I'm going to have all my skirt in here. And I'm going to pull this tight, not completely tight, to about a 6-inch circumference, which means about 3 inches, probably. Let's do 4 inches across, as you can see on my measuring guide right here. About 4 inches. Okay? And then I'm just going to tie it off. Nothing special, nothing fancy. Put my string. And there we have, shake it all out, a cute little skirt for our dolly. And here you have our finished product. I added a little ribbon to her hair from a Christmas package that I had just to finish that off, but it's not really holding anything because we sewed that in place. One thing we're going to do, which I think is super fun, is we are going to attach Sharpies to all our wrists so the girls can draw their own faces, maybe put some henna on their arms, write their names on them, so they can personalize these dolls. Put necklaces on them. There's all kinds of endless things, but to give them a little more personality, a little more ownership to these dolls. So I thank you for joining us. I hope you're inspired to do one for our trip to India or for just your little girl at home. It's a fun project, and I know my little girl loves them. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.